Right? We're talking about the worst polls ever for any president belong to Donald John Trump. That's worse. He's doing worse than Carter. He's doing worse than Joe Biden did in his last term. When you put it all together, you just go, man alive, man. What are you?
Harry Enton recently appeared on Abby Phillip's show on CNN to discuss the growing problems surrounding Donald Trump's poll numbers, concerns about the economy, and the increasing belief among many Americans that Trump is disconnected from the financial struggles everyday people are currently facing. During the panel discussion, the conversation focused heavily on public frustration over rising economic pressure, declining confidence in Trump's leadership on financial issues, and the broader political impact these numbers could have moving forward. In this video, we are going to break down several moments from that discussion on Abby Phillip's show while also taking a closer look at the reactions, the arguments being made by the panel, and what all of it could mean politically as the debate around Trump's economic leadership continues to intensify.
When it comes to political gaffes, many of which have defined careers, we've heard about the Dean Scream, binders full of women, voting for and against it, and it's legal because the president does it. And then there is Donald Trump. Because he floods the zones with daily and sometimes hourly blunders and moments, many Americans, particularly his own supporters, often give him a pass for it. But could this week's gaffe expose him on something that Americans are not willing to let slide?
When you're negotiating with Iran, Mr. President, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody.
That is quite a thing to say out loud, especially considering that 77% of Americans are ticked off about their financial situation. Many of them blame Trump and his policies. And boy, did Republicans that tie themselves in knots trying to defend what Trump said or claim that they didn't hear it at all.
I don't know that he said that.
I think that was just a sort of a throwaway line.
Did he say that? I don't have a comment about that, mostly because I think he actually does care.
I would have to find out the context of it. I'm sorry.
Don't take it out of context. The American people love him.
It's got to be out of context. I don't think there's anything he's more focused on.
I don't know the context in which he made that comment.
I don't think the president said that. I think that's a misrepresentation of what the president said.
Well, you heard it yourself. And it does seem like in this moment when gas prices are $4.50 a gallon, it's a moment when even before the gas prices were $4.50 a gallon, Americans were not happy with how he's handling the economy.
And regardless of what exactly he did mean, the context matters, but also here's what also matters. Democrats love that comment. They're going to cut it and put it in so many ads before the midterm elections. My goodness gracious, it's a dopey comment from that perspective. And more than that, we're talking about 79% of Americans disapprove of Donald Trump on gas prices. That is the highest percentage that any president has had disapproving them on gas prices in any question I could possibly find. We're talking about when we're talking about inflation, right? We're talking about the worst polls ever for any president belong to Donald John Trump. That's worse. He's doing worse than Carter. He's doing worse than Joe Biden did in his last term. When you put it all together, you just go, man alive, man, what are you doing?
Well, if it were just that one thing, that would be enough. But here's Trump on Thursday.
Before moving into the next part of the discussion, it is important to point out that Harry Enton is making what many Democrats would probably consider a very strong political argument during this exchange with Abby Phillip. In theory, Democrats should already be turning comments like these into campaign ads and preparing to use them heavily during the midterms. But honestly, many critics believe they should already be flooding television, social media, and billboards with those messages right now. If someone were running Democratic campaign strategy aggressively, they would likely already have ads everywhere showing Donald Trump alongside quotes suggesting he is disconnected from the financial struggles ordinary Americans are facing. This is not the type of political issue that usually disappears on its own or something campaigns simply allow voters to forget over time. Republicans have often shown a strong ability to repeat a message constantly until it becomes politically damaging, while Democrats are frequently criticized for not showing the same level of relentless focus or urgency when opportunities like this appear. So while Harry Enton may very well be correct about the possible political consequences of these economic frustrations, there are still plenty of people who remain skeptical about whether Democrats will actually push the issue hard enough to fully capitalize on it politically.
The economy. Listen.
You know, when they talk about high prices, I inherited the high prices. I'm getting them down. I've got them down incredibly. People are finding other places to buy oil, like Texas. So I don't want to say we're making a fortune. You understand that? Because if I say, they're going to say, oh, he forgets about the little man, you know, with the $4 gasoline.
Okay, it's not true.
And this is where many critics believe the conversation becomes much bigger than just calling it a simple gaffe on the screen during Abby Phillip's show on CNN. According to those critics, this was not some accidental slip of the tongue by Donald Trump at all. They argue that the comments reflected what Trump genuinely believes about politics, money, and ordinary Americans. In their view, Trump has always approached politics through the lens of personal success, power, branding, wealth, and loyalty to the people inside his own circle, whether that involves family members, political allies, or wealthy donors. Critics argue that concern for average working Americans has never truly appeared to be his main priority. Instead, they believe Trump sees many ordinary supporters as people who can be politically useful, while the real rewards go to wealthy insiders and powerful figures who know how to navigate the system the way he believes he has throughout his career. Supporters strongly reject that interpretation, but critics argue the pattern has become increasingly difficult to ignore. They also point to Trump's later appearance on Fox News with Bret Baier, where he was given what many viewed as an easy opportunity to clarify or soften the earlier comments. Instead of backing away from them, Trump largely stood by his position and suggested that many people agreed with him. For critics, that moment reinforced the argument that this was not a random mistake or poorly chosen wording. They believe these are opinions Trump genuinely stands behind, and some critics extend that argument further by claiming similar attitudes exist within parts of the broader Republican Party as well, even if many Republican officials remain more focused on how controversial statements like these could affect future elections and public support.
Inherited high prices, gas prices or otherwise. But Trump is living in this world in which he can still blame Biden for everything, and yet Americans are saying the clock is ticking on your term, and you promised us that you'd do something about it.
Yeah, so given those expectations, I think the frustration is understandable. I mean, it is true that we had record inflation in many ways during the prior administration, too. It's also true that the state that I'm from, California, prices are way higher than in any other state in the country. We have among the highest grocery prices, highest housing costs, highest gas and electricity rates in the country. So there's plenty of blame to go around. I think that is the problem, though, with the way Washington...
Guess what? Donald Trump is the President of the United States, and yes, that includes California, too. California is still one of the states in this country. No matter how badly MAGA voices and parts of the right try to act like blue states suddenly stop mattering whenever political news becomes inconvenient or reflects badly on Trump. The president's job is to represent the entire United States, not just the states conservatives approve of or politically support. With that said, let's shift over and take a look at Carrie Champion and Arthur Aidala clashing once again over another round of familiar MAGA talking points and arguments surrounding the war.
They can have a nuclear weapon. They've tried to wreak enough havoc on the global economy as it is. We don't want to incentivize it to do that more. But at the end of the day, every decision that we make in every policy domain needs to be squarely focused on how is this going to impact affordability.
I totally agree with what you just said. If you're President Trump, are you supposed to say, and maybe we're giving him more credit than he deserves, how premeditated this was, but are you supposed to say, of course I care about the finance?
It honestly does not matter whether it was planned in advance or not, because he doubled down on the comment afterward, and by doing that, he only reinforced the growing belief that the financial struggles everyday Americans are facing are simply not something he genuinely cares about.
I care about the midterms. Of course I care, because you're basically telling Iran, keep blocking the strait, screw up our economy as much as possible. That's the biggest damage you can do to us. And you don't tell your adversary what your weakest point is.
You can definitely say, yes, of course I care
yes,
about
you should say that,
the pain that Americans are going through. I mean, it is totally possible to say Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. And also, we see your pain. We understand that you're going through something.
Here's the problem with that argument. First of all, you're trying to assume what he meant, and we don't know what he meant. You sound like the context of it all, and I don't want to hear that if I'm an American. We at the latest polls, 24% of Americans, those are the only ones who actually think we should actually be at war, and this is not an issue. I'll tell you what I do know. He could have easily said, yes, I care. I really do care. But you know what? We got $1 billion, literally, I honestly don't know how much his ballroom is, but his priorities are not the American people. I'm going to tell you that we've got a ballroom that he cares about.
You seem like a ballroom person.
I don't care about
a ballroom.
I don't care about a ballroom. He cares about a ballroom. He can tell you he cares about his ballroom, but he doesn't care about our finances.
Would you agree that our safety is more important than our economy? In a general sense.
Let me tell you, do you believe Americans think they're more safe because we're at war with Iran? Be honest.
I think
the majority of Americans do not. The latest poll has said that.
Iran is a very formidable enemy of the United States. We are their number one target.
Most Americans feel more safe right now because we are at war?
If you have the stats, I'm not going to argue with that.
Carrie Champion is making a very strong point here. A huge number of Americans are against this war, and many people never saw Iran as the immediate issue affecting their everyday lives in the first place. What most Americans are actually worried about is whether they can afford gas to get to work and handle basic daily responsibilities, whether they can afford groceries, and how far their paycheck is really stretching anymore. I was at the grocery store recently and saw a large container of orange juice costing nearly $9, and that alone tells you how expensive everyday life has become. People are stressed about medical bills, about whether they can even afford to see a doctor or go to the hospital if something serious happens. Those are the issues weighing on people's minds right now. A lot of Americans are asking themselves questions like, will I be financially destroyed if I get sick? Will I ever actually be able to retire? Will I be able to send my kids to college? And how am I supposed to keep up with these constantly rising costs? Those are the fears many Americans are living with every single day. So, when right-wing voices try to shift the conversation toward outside threats and national security fears, many voters remain focused on the economic pressure happening inside their own homes every single day. Critics argue that this narrative is being pushed heavily by Donald Trump and MAGA politics, while also claiming that Trump's real focus has always been himself and his own interests rather than the struggles facing ordinary Americans. As I mentioned earlier in this video, it will be very interesting to see whether Democrats are actually able to politically capitalize on this moment. Even with ongoing concerns about gerrymandering and the broader election landscape, many Trump critics believe this should become a major motivating issue heading into November. One of the most common criticisms you continue to hear is that Trump cares deeply about money and power, but not nearly as much about the average voter. But now I want to hear from you in the comments. Where do you stand on this debate? Are you closer to the perspective shared by Harry Enton and Carrie Champion on Abby Phillip's show, where they argue that many Americans are not buying this message and believe Trump's administration mainly benefits insiders at the expense of ordinary people? Or do you agree more with the MAGA argument that Iran represented a serious threat to the United States? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.